That didn't work.
Hey!
It just went straight to me for some reason. That was odd. Why did it do that? Like, it's all working just fine except for that one spot. It's like post timer vid. Nope. It's like, no, we're not going to do that. Whatever. That's okay. Ryan, welcome back to the Kessel Chat. How are you doing?
Hey, Jeff. It is like my favorite time of the week. We get to come back and talk about Star Wars. So yeah, I'm like super excited to be here. Thank you so much, of course, for kicking the show off and having me on.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone who's joining us right now live. It's awesome. I don't have it in the shed. Oh, shoot. So I put it in the notes earlier, or I'm going to. I don't have it in the shed. I ordered, or I got a hold of a second copy of one of the latest Star Wars: The High Republic books by Cavan Scott. It's called The Rising Storm. And actually, what it was is Amazon is very confusing to me sometimes, where I go to order a book or pre-order a book, and I don't think it's happening, so I ordered it apparently a second time. And I did, because I ordered some of these books like 6 months ago. I totally forgot about it, and also 2 copies show up on my doorstep. I'm like, yay, 2 books. Okay. I'm like, great, we have something to give away on the Kessel Chat. Fantastic. So we have another book to give away. It'll be The High Republic, The Rising Storm. We'll talk about more details a little bit later. So everybody's watching now, or if you're watching later on, we'll tease a bit over the next couple of weeks what we're going to do a raffle for it. But gotta keep watching, and we will raffle that off pretty soon.
That's awesome.
It looks like Rich is here with us too. Rich, we've got all of the
hey, Rich,
all of the Star Wars knowledge you might possibly want to have tonight. It's gonna be grand. It'll be fantastic. I promise. It'll be awesome. We can get into it because So I went back to last week's episode and I was listening again. I'm like, I know we talked about something in the end that we really wanted to do, and you and I were messaging offline a little bit earlier about this. And we both kind of remembered, oh shoot, there was these other things we also wanted to talk about. We got so many topic ideas that we just got to write them down in the middle of the show. But at the very end of the show, this one came up, and I was teasing it on social media earlier. Exactly, I was teasing it on social media earlier of the best ways to watch best order to watch Star Wars in, and like from a certain point of view, because we're clearly going to have what our own opinions, and we are probably not going to be nearly as inflammatory as as like energy building that some other people tend to be when it comes to this particular topic. I've seen like the Twitterverse go bananas when it's like, no, you have to watch it this way or whatever. So we thought it'd be fun today to just kind of get into like what order we like to watch the movies in, why, and then just I don't know. I have mine, but I'm really curious. I know we talked about it a bit last time, but we can't just simply say whatever order you want. Like that doesn't make for a good show. So you gotta give us a little bit more this time, Ryan.
So, okay, I could not wait to get into this topic because I have a lot of different thoughts about in what order to watch the Star Wars movies. And I'd like to start with my preferred order. And in fact, the way that I actually brought this to my kids. Like, when I wanted to bring Star Wars to my oldest, I grew up in a world where everybody knew that I can't believe I'm going to say spoilers. Darth Vader is Luke's father. Exactly. And so I just grew up knowing that. And in fact, I grew up with copies of VHS tapes. So I actually didn't have the original Star Wars in my house growing up. We had a copy of Empire Strikes Back that my dad had taped off of like a weekend that we got HBO for free. And it was legit. I'm not saying this just because of the ongoing joke. It was Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, and Empire Strikes Back. And it was on one tape. And of course, I spent a lot of time watching Empire and Jedi, and we didn't have like the box set or anything because at the time, it was actually really hard to find a really great box set. Like I didn't have my own box set until they did the re-release with the enhanced THX THX sound, and I want to say that was like in the kind of early to mid 90s. And I remember because that was like the box that it had like the faces on it. Like it had the Darth Vader face for Star Wars, and it had the Stormtrooper for Empire, and it had the Yoda for Return of the Jedi. And so when I was growing up, all I had was that those two VHS copies, one of which is shared with Star Trek, that was Empire and Jedi. And I would watch Empire and Jedi all the time. And then my next door neighbor, Kevin, he had a copy of Star Wars, of course, the original Star Wars. Of course, another I taped it off of television copy. Mm-hmm. And that the only time I got to watch Star Wars is if I borrowed the tape from Kevin or I went over to his house. And so this was how I saw those movies for years. And of course, having gone through releases of the THX updates, the special editions, which of course I bought, the gold box, which I think was pan and scan, not the full screen. I think that was the silver box. And then, of course, the prequels came out. And there was the re-release of Star Wars, Empire, and Jedi that took place in the 90s as well, where you could go and see special edition. And I remember the tagline was see it again for the first time, which, millions of dollars to that dude. So the thing that was funny is that, and I know this was a long story to get to how I introduced it to my kids, but I wanted to supply that history, Jeff, because I wanted my daughter to having not heard about any of the, Darth Vader or anything. And before this became a TikTok thing that you did with your kids, I wanted to have my daughter watch Star Wars first and then get the big reveal of Empire second. And so the way that we ultimately watched was when she was about 4 years old. she watched Star Wars. She really got into Star Wars, and Princess Leia was like her favorite character. She was Princess Leia for like 3 or 4 consecutive Halloweens. I mean, it was like Princess Leia, Princess Leia, Princess Leia every single time. She was Princess Leia in Star Wars. She was Princess Leia in the bounty hunter uniform. She was Princess Leia on Hoth. We were always building new like versions of the Princess Leia outfit for Gabby to go on Halloween. And so then when we did the reveal of Empire, I mean, it was like mind blowing for her. It was like, oh my gosh, you know, Luke. She even said, like, is he lying? Is he lying? And so it was such a great reveal. And then we got to Jedi, and she loved Jedi, and so she was just like, oh my gosh, like love, you know, she just loved the trilogy. And then I was like, hey, guess what, there's a whole set of movies about how Darth Vader grew up and like young ObiWan Kenobi, and Luke and Leia's mom Padme, and how she was like a queen of an entire planet and then a senator, all these things, right? And she was like, oh my gosh. And so then I introduced episodes 1, 2, and 3. And so we like are a huge my daughter and I have obviously bonded for years over Star Wars. That is how we did it. And so my preferred order is the classic order, which is 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And then because my daughter was old enough and we could like go to the theater, and this was also back when she was still young enough to wear, you know, it was like which costume she was going to wear next. She went from Princess Leia to Rey. We watched 7, 8, and 9. And in fact, when we went to the theater, each one of those tickets, that was me, my wife, and my daughter for each one of those movies. So it was so great to kind of watch it that way. I know that that is a little bit of the traditional mindset, but having watched it through someone else's eyes, Jeff, it's unreal. It was unreal. Yeah. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's cool. I love the classic order is my favorite, like by far. Like I absolutely love watching the ones we grew up on as kids. And I remember getting that box set in like sometime in the mid 90s. It was remastered by THX. It was sound, and the one I had was like graphic quality, but like redone in THX or some other like Dolby, you know, Sony or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was like they just cleaned up the graphics a little. It was VHS still. And they tweaked a couple like a couple scenes in the movies, but it was more of like just enhancing them so they looked a little bit better. Like that was all it was. But yeah, I remember those, and I had those. I rewatched those things just over and over again till I thought it was gonna like break the tape in the cassettes. Okay, so I have two. I'll give you the one with my kids, my son first. The way I've tried. He's still a little on the young side, so he doesn't quite get it, and he's a little hyperactive, so trying to get him to sit still at 5.5 to watch. He's into or animated things in general, and I've got him to watch some of the animated Forces of Destiny cartoons because they're really short, they're not super dialogue heavy, and so he can get
my kids are big fans.
Yeah, and so at that age, at least at 5.5 for him specifically, I can get him to sit through those. What I've tried to do with him is have him watch Rebels with me, animated, because I know that getting him to watch a regular movie, it's really hard to get him to sit still for any length of time to watch a regular, you know, live action movie. So I started actually watching Rebels, which takes place before the original Star Wars, timeline wise, before A New Hope, before the rebellion really is formed fully. Or it takes place around the time that Luke is still a kid on Tatooine. It kind of takes place around that time frame. And so I've tried to get him to watch that a little bit. One, because it's easier for him to consume, but also because I've noticed with him that he attaches himself to characters that feel more like him. And so like Ezra Bridger, when he's young, is sort of that way, and he's kind of exploring his space and learning who he is and all that. We're not there yet. He's still, I think, a little too young, and he's just, I don't think he personally, just as an individual kid, is quite ready to sit down and actually understand what he's really watching. That's okay. I'll come back to him. So the preferred order I actually have for the entire movie series is a slight variation of what you do, which is classic first. So 4, 5, and 6, episodes 4, 5, and 6, because I love them. And there's something for me beyond nostalgia. There's something in the character development for those movies that the low budget filming, even if you watch the modern versions that have been remastered and all that type of stuff with new graphics and all that jazz, they look good, but there's still this classic movie where it's much more based off of storyline than it is visual graphics. Watching like the trench run on the first Death Star, watching lightsaber fights. There's not many of them. They're not super interactive, even with advanced graphics. They're not. There's not a lot to them. It's more dialogue. It's more story heavy. It's storytelling that's advancing through there. The Jedi components of it are, at least for me, more subdued, and I'm becoming more and more of a fan of like, there's the Jedi stuff that I love, and then there's everybody else, and I really love the tales of everybody else, because I can attach myself personally, like realistically, to them more than I can the Jedi stories. The Jedi stories they're the fun stuff. They're the icing on the cake. They're great. I love seeing it, but they're always over the top and they're fantastical. The other stuff, as we've talked about in other episodes, I connect with better. So I really love watching that about 4, 5, and 6. And then personally, I actually like to jump straight to episode 7, and not watch the prequels until after I finish 7, 8, and 9. And here's
wow!
And here's the reason for that. There's obviously a lot of backstory you get that make up Luke and the characters you see in the final 3 movies. But honestly, when I watch 7, 8, and 9 without having seen the prequels in a while, and just kind of do this, the story that I watch feels more complete to me. It feels more like a self-contained or a contained story in those 6 movies. I watch it. Yep. I see Luke from being a kid to being a grumpy old man on whatever the name of the planet. I can't blank it. Not Tython. Whatever the name of the planet was he was on.
Tatooine. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Which one?
The planet he's living on when he's like isolated himself. Why am I blanking on the name?
I'm blanking on it too. It starts with an A. He's like, I don't know why I thought.
I keep thinking
of course
Atoll.
You would know Tatooine, but what?
I keep thinking an atoll, like an island or something, but I know that's not the name of the planet. Anyway, someone's gonna correct me.
Someone's gonna be like, these guys are gonna talk about Star Wars and they don't know the planet that Luke has secured himself on, that is the home of the Jedi and the origin. Oh,
I know.
Please,
I failed. Yeah.
We just lost all of our credibility.
I should just hit finish on the live stream right now, right? We'll just shut this down.
Shut it down.
Shut
it down. It's we've lost all of it. It's all done now.
So I love watching. I love watching the final 3 movies after the original series, because you get to see Luke as he is. You get to follow his character arc in that exact way from beginning to end, and you see it and go, oh yeah, this is how he plays out. The reason I really love watching the prequel trilogy afterwards is because it's one of those things where it's for me, these 6 movies are the story. This is the Skywalker Saga right here. Anakin, he was Luke's dad, but I don't really see him as part of the Skywalker Saga. I see him as part of his own story that led to the start of what I call the Skywalker. And I can consider the Skywalker era, or that saga, to be Luke from the beginning of his hero's journey to the end of it in Return, and then when he comes back as sort of the mentor and then fades away. For me, that is the Luke story, and that buttons up one really good circle for me of all these characters and things happening, but really they're kind of centering around, for the most part, Luke and his tale and things that are happening. And for me, the prequels are like, oh, just like you said to your daughter, oh, hey, by the way, you want to learn some of the backstory for some of these other characters? You don't need any of the backstory, but would you like to know some of it? It's one of those things where, like, you and I have talked about this in movies or books, where a great story, and I see Joanna's on too. We've all talked about this. In a really good story, when a character, or when you learn the character to what really is the end. Okay, the end is here. It leaves you thinking, clearly there's more going on. No, but that's the end of this tale. We don't have to talk anymore about that character. But what if you did get the taste of that thing for that character that happened right afterwards, or right before this story started? That's to me what the prequels are. Do you need them to understand anything about A New Hope all the way through The Rise of Skywalker? In my opinion, no, you don't need them at all. But they're amazing to know, to go back and watch and go, oh, okay, well I get all these other things now. Fantastic. But were you missing them before? No, the stories are just great stories. So I love that. That's for me, It's a great story arc that completes itself, and then you want to fill in the blanks later on. Go back and watch the prequel trilogies, and we'll fill in some blanks for you later on.
Oh, I actually I really respect that as a run, and I'm going to answer the question too because I saw it up there. I think it was Joanna's question about which is my daughter's favorite. I think I don't, she's 13 years old now. And so her favorite is often like jumping around. Like she's very much into the sequel trilogy now too. And I think she might say if you ask her Last Jedi, like that's like her go-to. But if I was to say what's the one that's on, that if it's on in our family room and she's walking by, she'll sit down and watch it. 99% of the time, it's going to be the original Star Wars. Like if that is on, she will walk by and sit down and keep watching it and watch it all the way through. And so I don't know if that's just
much respect.
I feel like it's like, you go to your first love. And it's funny, by the way, it was actually really funny back then too, because when she was really into Star Wars, it was after the prequels, it was well before the sequel trilogy. And so there wasn't a lot of like toys that were out at the time, or like there wasn't like a lot of like, even there's always Star Wars merchandise, but there just wasn't a lot. And so it was funny because we were trying, she wanted to get things and we were like, it's hard to find. Yeah, it was just really interesting to kind of watch her go through that. But I love how you talked about you can almost put like kind of story brackets around 1 through 6, and then you could put a set of story brackets through 4 through 9. And I think that's because one, like I think George Lucas had that kind of like he knew what he was going to do in 4 through 6, and then thought, I'm going to tell all of Anakin's story 1 through 6 now. Anakin is the person. I want to tell the tragic hero and redemption story. And because that is a full story cycle that you're able to go through, I think that's why 1 through 6 works. And I also think that's why you don't need 1, 2, and 3 if you want to go 4 through 9. And just watch Luke go through that journey. Because then it is, instead of watching Anakin go rise, fall, and be redeemed, instead you see Luke rise, retreat, and reemerge. And so it's this really nice, like almost parallel stories that they're in. Now I've got a really quick question that I'd like to run at you, Jeff, and it's actually a different type of what is the best order, and it's not even what is the best and what is the worst. It is, if you could do without one, which one would it be?
Oh,
and if you could do without two, which of those two would it be?
so are we talking without one or without two of the trilogy movies, or of anything?
All nine. Is there
9.
one that you're like, you know what? You don't have to watch that one. And it's not to say that it's bad. It's not to say that it's the worst. It's the one that you could say, I don't think you need to watch it. And if you had to pick two of them, what do you think it would be?
For number 1 for me, if I was to pick one, it's Revenge of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith. 100%.
Oh, snap. Interesting choice.
Phantom Menace sets up for me like really good bad guy that you see and the bad guy you don't. There's Sidious and there's Maul, and you get introduced to Maul, and you get to see ObiWan grow very quickly in a movie, complete at the end of it by killing Maul, trying to save his master dead, he becomes the master. Like there's a cycle there that happens. We get to meet Anakin as a little kid, like that sort of thing begins. We get to see we get to see the majesty of like what are good Jedi, what are Jedi that aren't great. Like there's some intricacies there, some real people, typical battle stuff, good storyline. I love it. And then when you get to the second movie, when you get into Attack of the Clones, I would keep at Attack of the Clones for 100% because in A New Hope, we're like, oh, you fought with my father in the Clone Wars. Like the Clone Wars has been mentioned so much. Like you need to see the Clone Wars. Like what is this thing that you're talking about? Like we need to understand what are the Clone Wars. Now, granted, you see more of the actual Clone Wars in Revenge of the Sith. You don't see it in Attack of the Clones. You just see that it begins in Attack of the Clones. But I don't think you need Revenge of the Sith to know that. Go watch the Clone Wars. They're far more enriching than the Revenge of the Sith is. Watch that animated series. You'll learn a hell of a lot. Either of the animated series from back in the early 2000s or the modern one, you'll learn a lot more about what happens in Revenge of the Sith, so that if you watch the Clone Wars animated series and both versions of them, when you get to Revenge of the Sith, everything there is sort of like oh yeah, okay, yeah, of course that all happened. Yeah, sure. I didn't actually need to watch this movie to guess that was what was going to happen at the conclusion of the Clone Wars, because you watch Revenge of the Sith after seeing those and you're like, yeah, this is all like you're just buttoning up what just happened to these animated series. So for me, it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, he was going to become the Emperor. Yeah, we know that. There's nothing surprising for me other than like a key moments like Mace Windu dying. Okay, yes, it caught me off guard, but of course it was going to happen, like, because the Emperor's going to win and he's going to take power. So like these characters, like you watch it, it's like, yeah, none of this is actually surprising. Anakin's going to fall. I'm sorry for the spoiler. Anakin becomes Darth Vader. I apologize if you didn't know that already, but that becomes like, you don't. For me, Revenge of the Sith, like the movie doesn't need to exist to know that all the stuff that happens in that movie is exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's you knew all the broad strokes in that one because it's so close to the start of the next part of the series. But please keep going. I'd love to hear your pick number 2. Again, all 9. You don't have to watch one of them. I'm really interested in kind of hearing your thoughts.
Rise of Skywalker.
I right there. I am going to I'm gonna completely 100% agree. I'd love to hear your reasons though behind this.
There's a lot of nuance I could get into, but there's a moment in The Last Jedi for me that is like, that's the ending. That is the ending of a story. Nothing else is necessary at this point. Is at the end, at the actual end of The Last Jedi, the little boy in the hangar on Canto Bight and picks up the broom with the Force and starts sweeping. I'm like, there, done. That is the end of the series. You don't need anything else after this point. Anything after this point is just belaboring the story to go on longer so we can make another movie. Not that The Rise of Skywalker was a bad movie, to your point, but for me, like, that was awesome. I watched it and I go, oh, like, yes. Oh my God, yes, he's another Jedi. There's something more here. Great. Like, just like seeing in Game of Thrones in the TV show, seeing Arya get on the boat and she's sailing west and no one else has ever sailed west and never come back before. Great, she's going to go do it. I don't actually need to know what happens after that point. I just need to know that there's hope. There's a chance. Like, but you're saying there's a chance. Like, that's all I needed to know in that moment. That little kid is like, there's the chance right there. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I'm happy.
Oh no! See, I really like that. I by the way, I completely agree. I good. I like that, Rich. The thing that I feel like too is so Star Wars kind of reached kind of a cultural, like it's like a cultural pinnacle, right? And so part of it's often kind of fighting between being almost meta references to itself as well to other things, and also potentially derivative. Because of the fact that it often sequels and an entire sequel trilogy, it needs to feel old but new again, and that's a really hard line to really hit. And so one of the things that I loved about The Last Jedi is it walked the balance of meta references. It brought in it took away it kind of reset expectations. It also had a lot of really great cinema meta references, which I absolutely loved, which I feel like really speaks to the types of things that George Lucas used to do in his movies as well, where he's either referencing things like Wizard of Oz or even the old like Hammer films, like the old Nightmare films where you have like, you know, Dracula, all of these like pulp movies that were from the 20s, or even of course Metropolis. And so when I was watching, I know we've talked about this scene, which is the scene where Rey is on the Millennium Falcon and she's looking down the ramp and she looks through the Force at Kylo Ren and she hits the thing and the door is closing on them, and noting that separation that they now have between each other. I've talked about this in the past. I'm a huge Godfather fan. This could be the Godfather chat. We can go on and on and on about this, but when at the end of Godfather 1, And there's a similar scene in Godfather 2, but the one at the end of Godfather 1, which is what this is referencing, where what is it? Al Neri comes in and kind of pushes the door closed as Kay is watching how her husband has transformed and is he's no longer Michael. He's now Don Corleone. And that separation happens and there is a division of that relationship. That is an amazing meta reference. And it's one that if you're watching movies, you're like, I know what that means. I know that means now that Rey and Kylo have this division. There's a separation between them. But likewise, just like what you said, where the boy picks up the broomstick. I mean, we've talked about this. That was so many young children in the 1980s. We didn't have those unless you had a ton of money. Brian Sutton, I'm looking at you because you had one of these lightsabers. You didn't have a lightsaber, so you had to go and kind of make your own. And I remember I used a broomstick, and so it's just I love that scene. I love the whole concept of what do we have left? We have everything that we need. This is it's a great set of references. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of you could end at I think episode 8. So yeah,
let's turn the
Jeff,
tables.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. So let's turn the tables. Same question back to you. I want to hear yours. Your 1 and then your 2.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So R2 is the same, which is, and it is actually my number 1. It's Rise of Skywalker. And again, no shade on Rise of Skywalker. I just feel like it's almost superfluous, like an epilogue. It's one of those things that it's like, I don't really need to know this. It's like, it's fine. It's fine. But the part of the story, and maybe it's that there's the simultaneous feeling of knowing that Luke has passed on and has become one with the Force, and he's cool with that. That Rey has stayed true to where she's going, that Finn has recognized that he has something to believe in, that Poe has become a leader. And I think that privately, knowing that Carrie Fisher had also passed away during the making of The Last Jedi, I feel like that's when it's like, oh, the series kind of ended there.
Yeah.
So I that's why it's like episode 9. And it's fine. It's fine. There's a lot of really cool things in episode 9. There's a lot of really cool moments that I like. There's even cool force powers that I enjoy. I wish they would have come up with another word than Sith Wayfinder. That's like something I would have put in as like a filler word and said, come up with a better word than Wayfinder later. And then went, oh no, I forgot. And we already filmed it. It's not a journey that I need to take. Now I'm going to pick a non-controversial pick for my first movie that I think that you can probably not watch. And it is because I think it's okay if you didn't see it, which is, and I know this is going to be obvious, The Phantom Menace. And that's me saying this, thinking now, Phantom Menace might be the best of looking at it from a film quality. Mm-hmm. Might be the best film in the prequel trilogy. Come at me. I'm ready to. I can defend that. I can write a master's thesis on. I actually think it could be a good film. It's like a solidly put together movie, and I almost wonder if it's because it was shot on film. George Lucas is notoriously budget conscious, and when he was having to shoot on actual film, I feel like he was like, hey, we got to get these shots done. done. And when it became digital, I feel like what happened is all boundaries went out the window. And because there was and I'm sure you've seen too. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I totally agree with you. Every single time, for someone who doesn't know how to watch for those things because they just don't care, and that's totally, you don't need to care, or just doesn't know what to look for. I think, at least how I feel it, and I think how others could probably feel it, is there's a disjointed nature that you can feel in the film, because to your point, the idea of all boundaries are off, you can kind of do whatever you want. Yeah, and it's like the statement free like a puppy. Yeah, it's free, but I mean, is it though? Like, all boundaries may be off at that point, but you still need to have a way to like rein yourself in, because if you look at like the behind the scenes filming, and I know we both have seen probably this, the behind the scenes filming of The Mandalorian, and that really amazing set that they built that's like this, not like this, it is a completely 360 top and sides set that can play real live film in 360 on all sides at the same time. And like all of the scenes and things for the entire movie, for the most part, are filmed inside this space. Like even then, Favreau and others, they still physically build a lot of they drop in dirt and dust and sand, and they build rocks inside of it and things, because even they will say, him and Filoni will say when they're filming those things, you still need to have real in what you're doing. You can't if you digital everything, it looks digital. And that was part of my problem with a lot of those prequel movies, is especially when he went back and redid them, did more digital and more CGI. I was like, you're taking me, to me, it's almost like I can see the actors on green screen. It's almost like I'm watching actors on green screen. These look like matte paintings more than they look like actual sets. And it's like I'm watching an actor act in front of a matte painting. I'm like, that's not fun. Like I can see it. So I'm no longer in the fantasy. I'm watching it happen from like, it's like watching a stage performance that's a magical, and then going up in the rafters and looking down. Well, now we can see all the mechanisms. Like the magic is kind of gone. A different kind of magic is apparent, but you're seeing something you probably weren't really meant to see. And I'm with you. Like when you take those boundaries off, it doesn't feel as good. It really doesn't. At least not to me. It feels, it takes me out of the moment.
No, I think good art requires boundaries. I feel like, and I think what happened is they thought of to rob the Jurassic Park line, they were more interested in whether or not they could. They didn't question if they should. And what happened was I think this is in episode 2 especially, is because it was such a new technology to them, and they started realizing, oh my gosh, we could composite anything into these shots. They started compositing everything. Like at one point they composite like a color for the carpet. And it's like, why did you do that?
Just
like it was fine. It's like, what's going on? You guys are overworking this right now. Yeah. And it's one of these things that when it is so overworked, it stands out and it doesn't feel right. And I think that's why episode of The Force Awakens actually was so well received, because you got to have, I will challenge anyone that the shots that when you have a practical effect caught in camera, it's everything. It's just a great moment to see when you're able to actually see a really great effect in camera. Episode 7, Force Awakens did such a great job at handling that. Did such a great job at mixing those practical effects, and to actually quote the man himself. And it's like it's funny how people become heathens of their own religion. George Lucas said in 1980, a movie that with special effects are to assist the story. A movie can't be special effects. And that's like, oh my gosh, like, did you forget that? Yeah. And I think that's because there weren't enough people around him. You need people to say no to you. And that's like a big thing. You need people around you when you're an artist to give you to help shape what you're doing, because art is in the revision. It's like it's there when you're in the editing room, it's there when you're even doing those shots. And so that's why it's like those shots just got out of control. And it's funny because you keep seeing George overcorrect. Episode 1 is boring. Oh well, then episode 2 is going to be crazy, and then episode 2 is it's lacking the story. In episode 3, they came in and they brought in Tom Stoppard, who wrote like Shakespeare in Love, and basically was like, oh, I know what I'm going to do here. I am going to have episode 3 be Hamlet. Episode 3 is like a retelling of Hamlet. It's Anakin, and he's like, should I do something? Should I not do something? Should I act? Should I not act? And so it's this funny thing that like George is like, and I know him so well, so I can just call him George. George Lucas is just this guy that like kind of got lost in the story that he was going to tell. And if you look at the purest version of what he was trying to do, it's in episode 1. It's even got this amazing title, like The Phantom Menace. It is almost Shakespearean. I mean, you could hear a character talking about this phantom menace that plagues me. It's a great story. Maybe it could have been executed better. Maybe it was a little too long. Pod racing was unreal. It was great. It's got great references to things like Ben-Hur. It's got great references to things like Buck Rogers, like all of those Buck Rogers stylings I love. But yeah, as much as I just got done bashing episodes 2 and 3, I think you could actually skip episode 1 if you just wanted to try to get into the story and go and even do the same numbers we were talking about before: 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 7, 8.
Yep,
I think you can still get a pretty cohesive story out of that.
I think you could.
Yeah.
I think you could easily take if you left out the Phantom Menace, make the confrontation between Obi-Wan, Qui-Gon, and Darth Maul a featurette that gets published separately that you watch, because it is probably in the. No, I'm not going to say probably in the film live action movies. That's the best lightsaber fight scene, hands down.
It is
easy.
It is. It's great.
It's just you watch it like in animated stuff, in the Star Wars: The Old Republic game, all these other animated things. They've done really amazing lightsaber fight scenes, whatever else, and martial fight scenes of various kinds. But in any of the movies, like the worst lightsaber fight scenes, and they're the best cinematographically and story wise, but they're the worst technically. Are in between Rey and Kylo in the end. They're terrible. Like, did you ever learn how to use a lightsaber from anybody? Well, the answer is no, they didn't. I mean, even Kylo didn't really. I mean, I don't see Snoke sitting in a room with him, sparring with him. Like, he was telling him what to do, and Kylo was winging that thing around with the little jets on the side and all that crap. It's like you watch them and they're like when they're on Yavin 4. They're not on the moon. Yeah. They're on Yavin 4. The Death Star has crashed, and him and Rey are fighting. And you watch, it's like massive, like Errol Flynn swashbuckling sword things flinging around, but there's no technical interest in what they're doing. But the Phantom Menace, that fight scene, Ray Park, he crushed it. Like, he made that. He choreographed that fight scene beautifully, and you watch it and you go, "Holy crap! Wait, this is what Star Wars could be like? Oh my god! Like, this is amazing!" Like, it is just fantastic to watch. But I'm with you. That could be a featurette. That could be a small featurette that you see someplace, in that it doesn't have to be a whole thing. It could just be a small snippet to watch.
I even I can't remember. I think it was I think it might have been Topher Grace re-edited episodes 1, 2, and 3 into one super movie, and I even think that some of those things would act as good flashback context. But again, the prequels suffer from one thing, which is it didn't know whose story the prequels were, and that's actually the thing that I think when we talk about what's the best order to watch Star Wars. When you were just talking about when you were talking about watching 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Because that tells Luke Skywalker's story. That's because 4, 5, 6 is Luke Skywalker and his journey and the redemption of his father, Darth Vader. When you get to episode 7, even though Luke doesn't appear until the end of the movie, the whole movie is about finding Luke Skywalker's the MacGuffin. Luke Skywalker is the thing that you're trying to find. He's the Triforce, it's like he's all of these things that it's like, I'm trying to get to this thing. Luke Skywalker at the end. And then episode 8 is, of course, this amazing tome of what happens when your knight is weary of battle. It's like, it's great because you're able to actually see him sullen, sad, reluctant to return. This is a great place to kind of pick up the rest of Luke's story, and then to have him end the way that he does. I'll be seeing you around, kid. I love that part of the story. That's actually where the prequels suffer, and where you could say that the sequel trilogy is the stronger order of those that order that you talked of, Jeff. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Because the prequel trilogy is constantly shifting
It is.
from movie to movie, whose movie is this? Who's the main character
And
here?
I can see an easy argument for somebody out there to make that the sequel trilogy is the same way, because each different directors, all that. I think there's a key difference here, though, and you've called it out several times. Is it's the prequels suffer from exactly what you just said, in not just in whose story is it from a character perspective, but also, is this George's story? Is it his cinematographer's story? Did the editors do a job? Did they do enough CGI? Like, it's almost like 5 different groups of people wanted to tell their part of the story, and then Lucas wanted to tell a different part of the story, and none of them actually meshed together. The CGI, the digital editing graphics pieces of it, I think, are just one visual major component of that. But you're right. I feel the same as you. Just like, they're so disjointed because it doesn't feel like any one person's actually. They're all almost like George says, do this. He leaves, and everyone's like, yeah, but I can do it better. But I can do it better. But I can do it better. And they all kind of went off and did their thing, and they got mashed together. And then, well, crap, we're done. We have to just put something out now. I know that's not what actually happened, but you were making a comment about like the gratuitous nature of some of those things, and I was thinking the scene in Attack of the Clones when they're on, and names are escaping me tonight. By the way, it was Octo. It was Octo.
By the way, you're dropping all the big ones because you were like Yavin 4 before. Like you're
okay. I got the right ones. All right,
getting the credit back. We're getting the credit back.
Okay, we're good. When they're on, the planet where the Death Star is actually constructed, and on the Attack of the Clones, when they go there, and there's all the bugs. I can't remember the name. I'm blanking on the name of that planet where all the bugs and
Geonosis.
Thank you. When they're in the droid factory, and the droids are being built, and Anakin is fighting some of them off, and Padme is running back and forth, like that. To me, that was super forced. And then, of course, when they cut to 3PO and R2, and the cutting them 3PO apart and putting a different head on them, I'm like, I watched it. I'm like, first time, no, just get 3PO and R2 do not need to be in this in any way, shape, or form. They're not contributing to anything. But second, like, the graphics there are so bad that when you watch Padme like run forward and run back and then run forward and dodge something, to me, it's like I'm watching the green screen of her like pretending that there's a box there and it's moving and she has to run and jump over it. It doesn't feel like there's any actual physical threat to her. Especially, this was not intended, or is intended for a different purpose, but I think what they missed is an unintended consequence of her being in all white. Like the intention there was to show her the clear, stark contrast between her and the environment that she's in, and her personality and her character type, and do that to this visual representation of all white clothing with a white cape. Like, she stands out. But the downside of that is it makes her stand out from the setting, and you don't see her get dirty. You don't see her get bumped into something, you get knocked over and have to get back up again, which is exactly what would happen. It happens to Anakin. It would happen to her too. It makes it not believable to watch, because like, no one would get through this unscathed. So how are you getting through this with your cape still on and you're good and you're not bumped, your clothes are not dirty in any way? It's like, what? Like, you're in a factory with molten metal pouring everywhere. Like, you'd have some soot on your face or something.
No, I totally agree with this. And again, this is from someone who was just like, you could skip 1 and start right with 2. So, and I think there was a question as to what is the one that I think is the problematic episode, or this is in the last session of the Kessel Chat. I'll give you a preview of coming attractions because we could get into this, but I can open it's episode 2. And this 100%. is I remember when I saw episode 2 and I was like, oh great, it's moving fast, there's all this mystery. I liked Django. I mean, a joke in my house is still, I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. These are great lines that are inside of that movie, but all of the things that you just said are exactly why these are kind of fundamental problems with episode 2. One, that whole sequence when they're in the droid factory, they decided to add in because they were like, we're in the 5th reel and we don't have like an action set piece. And they were like, and this is where they were like, we've messed this one up. And so they brought in Natalie Portman and Hayden Christensen to film that well after they were already done filming. And there's a great behind the scenes where they're telling Natalie Portman, so you're in this blue, so you're all in this big blue room and you've got to pretend that you're jumping here and then this box is going to come down. Now go under the box. And she's getting filmed and doing this, and behind the scenes there's a camera rolling, and she looks at them and she's like, oh, you guys are just kidding, right? This is all a joke. Like, you brought me back here because this is a practical joke. And no, that was legit. They were really going to do that. And that's why that scene seems disjointed. They also have a lot of different people working the cameras. And that's usually okay if you have first units, second units. But when your cinematographer is not on site doing those things, you actually had a lot of people that experimented because they were like, I want to really show my value here behind the camera. And so that's why you get some of those like crazy zooms that happen in that sequence. And then also during the battle sequence that's happening on Geonosis, none of that is ever repeated again in Star Wars. It is only done because the people that were actually working on those effect sequences were like, ooh, you know what would be cool here is if we did like a crazy zoom. And so that's why it's like what you said, there were too many people in the room. There weren't enough people saying no. And that's really where like a really good producer comes in. Often you're like, what does a producer do? A producer's there to say no. A producer's there. They can help refine an idea and maybe throw something in or say something like the kid stays in the picture. But their real job is to say, no, we're not doing that. And I will say this, it's easy for me to suspend my disbelief in movies. Especially Star Wars movies. I never doubted the puppet Yoda. I was like, that thing, he's alive. I never suspended my disbelief. And the first time I remember it happening in a movie that I watched was in episode 2 when Padme says, I love you to Anakin. And I think I said out loud, I don't believe you. It was one of these moments that I was like, those types of phrases have to be earned. You have to have like your characters really that was the first time I remember feeling, and I could put words to it now, that people were doing something, characters were doing something because the script told them to do it.
I had a distinct feeling when she said that. When she said, I love you, two thoughts raced in my head at the same moment. I was like, Anakin, I swear to God, if you say I know, I'm going to walk out of this fucking movie theater right now. Like, I'm done. This movie, I quit. I quit Star Wars. I'm like, done. He didn't say that, thank the gods. But like, at that moment, I'm like, you do not recreate Han and Leia. Bad script writer, bad director. I'm going to smack your hand. Don't. But the second thing I thought is, I really had a like, dude, did Star Wars just jump the shark? Like, did that, is that about to happen? I'm like, don't do that. Like, don't pull a Happy Days, man. We don't need any more shark jumping at all. Star Wars. I'm like, it was, whole section was just like, nothing is happening here. This is not useful.
Yeah. And to go give the opposite of what that was, what needed to happen in that movie was by the way, I totally agree with Kyle Winters on Jar Jar. I actually had a really hard time. I didn't know what was going on when Jar Jar appeared in episode 1. Again, episode 1 was one of those moments where it was so rough for me to watch because my expectations were so high that I was like, oh my gosh, like, was this bad? And I knew it was bad. I knew it was bad while we were watching it. That said, still, it's the best of the 3. As from a filmmaking perspective, my favorite of the 3 is Revenge of the Sith because I do really like the Hamlet storyline. But what's funny about
did we just disagree? I think that's
we did.
Maybe the second time ever on the show we've disagreed on something.
We totally disagree.
Write that down real quick. Hang on.
Yeah, we gotta put it on the list.
Take a screenshot.
Episode 1 was, I think, was like a solid movie. It has like fundamental problems. Jar Jar, like a huge problem. The things that's going on with Jake Lloyd. But he's a good actor. He's as good of an actor as he could be at that age, and he's doing the Lord's work trying to get those lines out. Why is he brought to a battle? Leave him at the Jedi Temple. Come on, guys. These are all things that it's like they're fundamental issues, but that movie is a great like it's shot well. It's the best film. But episode 3 is by far my favorite. And it's funny because you were just talking about, did episode 2 jump the shark? And what it needed to do was grow the beard, which for those of you who know what that means, that is when Commander Riker in season 2 of Star Trek The Next Generation grew a beard and the show got good. And so that is a Star Trek The Next Generation reference for Rich. But it is definitely something that growing the beard.
I think this is Rich's reaction to you bringing up Commander Riker.
No, yeah. If he's speaking the gun language there, which by the way, I found it incomprehensible. I was hoping for subtitles. I was like, what is he? And I remember,
it was like,
gosh,
it was like yeah. We need a new language. We need one. Oh, I know Pig Latin. No, we can't do Pig Latin. Slightly change Pig Latin. Yeah, you got it. Nailed it.
It was impossible. And then it's like there's certain characters that were all CGI that were actually really great. Like the cook at Dex's in episode 2.
Oh, yes.
I love that guy.
He was awesome.
Yeah, he's a great voice. The guy who did the voice acting was awesome. I liked, and I understand how weird that sequence was. ObiWan Kenobi goes to a burger shop that's in Modesto. Because that is essentially what that was. That was Mel's Diner.
He went to Mel's Diner. Yeah, that was exactly what it was. He went down to Mel's Diner. I'm like, can I get some like tater tots or something? Like, I'd be really happy right now.
Oh no! The grossest thing on that menu is Jawa juice. Shut it down. Yeah.
Health code violations, man. We don't drink Jawas. Right there. Sorry, we're done.
No, that was,
blue milk, good, but Jawas, dude.
Yeah, blue milk. Blue milk, I'll buy. But yeah, that was like one of those things. But yeah, episode 2, I still think you can start there. I think that it's okay to start there. It starts with a mystery. You get the backstory of the stormtroopers, which I think is great. I also think that I didn't like how Count Dooku, they like pasted his head onto another guy to do the lightsaber sequences.
Which made no sense to me. Like,
yeah, it totally makes no sense to me.
Well, Christopher Lee was an amazing swordsman. Like, an amazing, like, he taught me. I think he actually taught people many times how to do sword fighting on set because he was freaking good at it.
He also has the scariest story of, and when I mean scary, I mean creepy. And when I mean creepy, I mean like, I'm really glad I never ran into Christopher Lee. So Christopher Lee is like, has this amazing like war hero story. But one of the things that he made certain that Peter Jackson knew is he speaks very, matter of factly about things. And he was talking about, oh no, this is, I was in the special, spy service in the war. And that's not the sound someone makes when you stab them in the lung. It's like
not just stabbed, but stabbed in the lungs. Yes, and I remember seeing that Peter Jackson's like, you know what? When a guy tells you that, you just go with it. You just go with it.
What, Chris? He's clearly I'm gonna back off this one.
Yeah, he's clearly more of an expert than I'm ever going to be. So you know what? We'll do that. What you said.
Thank you for that. Thank you, everybody. We know what we're doing. So Christopher Lee, though, was great. One of the things I like about what makes a good lightsaber sequence for me is I really like episode 1 because it is just it's so great. It's thrilling. It's thrilling to watch. But one of the things I like is when you've got your two characters right next to each other and they can talk to each other. You've got an antagonist and protagonist right next to each other and they can talk to each other. And that's what makes things like Robin Hood so great. That's what makes, the old like swashbuckling Errol Flynn movies so great is when you have those two characters right next to each other. I love how Dooku is messing with Obi-Wan. And he even has that great line. This is the best line in episode 2 is when Anakin jumps out and saves Obi-Wan's life. And Obi-Wan and the Count Dooku says, "I would have thought you learned your lesson, boy." And Anakin says, "I am a slow learner." It is the best delivery, and it's the best part of episode 2, and it's great because it's your antagonist, protagonist with lightsabers being able to mess with each other, just like Darth Vader and Luke did in Empire. So, yeah.
I think we nailed it.
But yeah. So again, if someone's out there and they're wondering, what should I start with? I'm still gonna say start with 4, not just for nostalgia reasons, but if there's anything that I think is great about the original Star Wars, and it's unlike all of the other Star Wars movies, it takes place essentially in one day or 2 days. It's not taking time over a week. A lot of movies have that happen where you're seeing them kind of grow and change, and there's maybe even a month of time that's passed. In the original Star Wars, it's a matter of days. And so the story is always moving at like a clip pace. And there's also a really great thing too, which is it's kind of a 3-act story. And in each one of those acts itself is a 3-act play. So I would definitely say go and check out the original Star Wars. And yeah, I think you could watch that up to The Last Jedi. And The Last Jedi is of the sequel trilogy. That's my favorite. I'm a big fan of taking. I like your order, Jeff. I think you could go 4 to 8, and you can call it a day.
Yeah. I totally agree. 4 to 8, and you've watched a really good self-contained story that works. By the way, final thought for me on when Luke is gone, when he leaves, and he's the see you around kid, like, or whatever the exact line is, like, it's very Han Solo, and I love that. I love the attribution to Han in that moment. It makes me think of the scene in Solo where. At the very end of the movie, or near the very, very end of the movie, where Han and Chewie are standing next to each other on the desert planet, and they're talking to Enfys Nest, and she says, "You could stick with us," and he just kind of looks at Chewie and goes, and then she says, "Okay, you stick around," and he just kind of does the little, like, the hand wave, the 2-finger hand wave of like, like, it's very Harrison Ford. Like, I love the little tidbits like that they throw into the other movies that it brings you back to the original, because it brings you those little mannerisms, those little words. It brings you back to those people, because people would actually, in real life, would actually have an impact on each other, and they'd pick up each other's mannerisms, because you do that when you have a long relationship with people. Like, that's just how that works. So I love those connections, but I'm with you. You could just watch the movies and stop at Last Jedi, and you'd be good. If you want to see more, you go right ahead. If you like, it could almost be that sort of like, hey, if you want to just be a fan who enjoys watching the MCU or whatever in the theaters, you watch these. Cool.
Yep.
Oh, and afterwards, if you're like, you want to go watch some behind-the-scenes stuff, you want to learn a little bit more, go dive into the encyclopedia, then the other movies you can go watch, and it'll fill in some additional gaps for you. But you'll realize that they're not gaps that actually needed to be filled. Like, it's interesting to know them, but they don't really advance the story anymore. Like Rise of Skywalker.
Oh, no, totally.
Interesting, like, graphically and visually, and it's a fun movie to watch, but it doesn't really advance anything for you after The Last Jedi, at least not in my opinion.
You don't need to watch Thor 2,
just skip to Ragnarok and you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Just skip to Ragnarok. What's really funny though is, and I know that we're coming to the close of the show, is, we talked about prologue, which is 1, 2, and 3. We talked about epilogue, which is episode 9. But to borrow like a view of this from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, we didn't really talk about a Silmarillion type of story, which is Rogue One and Solo.
Yes.
Which are on the sides of all of these. And I actually think they work on the side. I actually think you can watch the original stories and then jump into there. Because I like that those are side stories that happen in parallel with our main stories.
I completely agree with you. They go beyond simple character development of, Solo. Who was he when he was young? Let me show you. We'll show you one snippet of it where he meets somebody and here's who he was. It's not that simple. It's more than that. It is its own side story that contributes to the larger set of stories being told that you could watch by themselves, and they're just great. They're just and Rogue One. I mean, you said your daughter has her one movie that if it's on, she's gonna sit and watch. If Rogue One is up, or if I see Rogue One, I'm like, I'm just gonna watch this. Like, I can't not watch it from beginning to end. I love that movie. I will go. I mean, the visual effects are so practical. I mean, there's CG effects in it, but so much of the explosions and people flying around and things happening are so much steeped in practical special effects and stunts that it makes you feel like you were in this movie, like you were part of the action. And so the impact of the story, the music that is playing, and the emotions that come through in the characters, the way they did it, make you feel like, whew, like it just kind of gets you right there. Or that's gas. I don't know. It's one of the two.
Oh no, I love that. I love that last statement that was there too up on the screen about having seen Star Wars in the theater. That was like, even when it was released, that was like one of my favorite moments, was seeing the original Star Wars in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, on a day-to-day basis, I kind of go back and forth from what's my favorite, and I'm usually between 2 points, which is if it's my love of Star Wars and my memory of what made me just like get into that world, it's the original Star Wars. But if it's the one that really pulls me in with the story, the one that it's like, man, this is a near like perfect movie, this is Godfather 2, it's Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
I just can't seem to get away from that one. Like, and it's so funny because when I was a little kid, Empire really scared me, because Empire is almost like it almost has like certain horror elements.
Mm-hmm.
I mean Vader does like pop out from behind a wall, and in the dark, you know, and just like it's just coming at you. And so when you're a kid, it's like a really like overwhelming movie. And you know, Luke gets, you know, it's all the, you know, he gets his hand cut off. I mean, it's terrible. He loses. The good guys lose in the end. Dak, poor Dak. But and of course Han Solo, frozen carbonite. But now I love that movie. Whether it's the, you know, I love you, I know, whether it's the Luke taken down an AT-AT all by himself, or of course the big reveal of Luke, I am your father. No, or actually it's no, I am your father. So whoever's out there is going to say that's not the line. But I always love that sequence with Yoda. I'm a big Yoda fan. Everything that Yoda says, and I love the whole like story, because I think this is the heart of the story, which is you know, always with you, it cannot be done. You know, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. He's got just all these great lines about our potential and the things that we can do. And that's what I think is the best part, because it's a mirror for the whole story. 1 through 3, 4 through 6, 7 through 9, all about like, you know, you can be the hero of your story. You just gotta, when Luke says it and he says, you know, I don't believe it. And he says, that's why you fail. I think that's the best part.
That is such a quintessential like statement for any story, like,
yeah.
Or personal lesson to remember is like I don't believe it, that's why you fail. Like, just remember that line, and like that could just be a good reminder for anybody, like doing anything in general.
Yeah.
Well, I think we could probably keep going, but I think we've done a really,
we've parsed it.
We've
done it.
We did. We piped it through. We grepped it. Whatever you want to say, it's good. We've got it formatted. We nailed it. We got some cool stuff coming next time. And just a reminder for everyone still watching, we have a giveaway coming soon. So Cavan Scott's The Rising Storm, one of the newest books in the High Republic series. I have an extra copy of it. We're going to be raffling that off soon. So keep an eye or ear out, whatever, to the show over the next couple of weeks. And if all goes well, we have our next special guest next week. I didn't tell you this, Ryan. We found another adventuring Star Wars geek who on social media who wants to be on the show. So more details to come, but we will have another guest on the show next Thursday evening, which will be
I'm really excited.
It's somebody who just got through, like, just powered through Heir to the Empire, and then the first Thrawn trilogy from Timothy Zahn that came out a couple of years ago, and then is through the 2 books of the current Thrawn trilogy, the Ascendancy is the current series, and he just finished reading the Rising Storm and a couple other things. So I'm like, this is a perfect person. So we might have to get into some like offbeat stuff with Thrawn and Wild Space. I don't know yet. We'll figure that out for next week. But if you're still watching the show, thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, hit subscribe. But I know you all did, so thank you. Hit a thumbs up on the video. Yep, up there, down there. I don't know, wherever the buttons are. Hit the thumbs up because it really does help the video on the channel. Thank you. And click the little bell if you want notifications. Ryan, anything you want to wrap up with?
No, just really happy to see so many people on the chat, people on the show today. We love doing this. Jeff and I talking, but we love doing this, of course, talking this all out with you all. And yes, Rich, only a handful of Trek references tonight. Coming next week, it's going to be Trek the whole time. Get ready for Vulcan Chat. We're not going to be talking about Thrawn. It's going to be all about the founding of the Federation. So yeah. But hey, thank you all so much for joining us. Again, you all are. It's great to have you all with us every Thursday.
Yep, we really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and we will see you soon.
Hey, bye, everybody.
Oh, and now it's just showing me. My outro videos aren't working. You just get to look at me, everybody, while I wrap up the live stream. Thank you for being here. It's at least good music, so there's something.